Food and health. Well, we're always confronted with questions when it comes to food. Does a diet rich in fruits and vegetables reduce the risk of cancer? Well, if you go to the media or if you go to the internet, you will see the term according to recent studies. But there are studies and not all studies are equivalent. So what I'd like to do is maybe look at certain terms you may encounter when you look at these various studies and realize that they do mean something. For instance, you have the observational, also known as the epidemiological studies. In this case, these are studies where the assignment of the subject is not controlled by the investigator. And within the epidemiological studies, you have different types as well. You have the case control studies, and essentially what happens in case control studies, you compare people with a specific condition, case, to other people who are otherwise similar except for that condition. For instance, in the terms of cancer, you're going to compare people with cancer to people, and this would be the case, to people that do not have cancer, the control, and you're going to see what may have been responsible for the difference. Now, the point to be made, which is very important, is that in this case of case control study, you always go back. These are called retrospective studies. And this is part of the problem, because when you go back, you have to interrogate, you have to ask people, did you eat lots of fruits and vegetables? Did you smoke a lot? To make sure that you may find an association between the disease and lifestyle. The best known, probably the first one of these case control studies, the one that was carried out in 1950 under the leadership of Richard Doll. And this is a study that showed that there was an association, notice the term association, between smoking and lung cancer. And what Richard Doll did, he looked at people that had lung cancer, compared them to people that did not have lung cancer, and eliminating all the other possible factors, he found that the people that developed lung cancer were smokers. So there was a very strong association between, the first very strong association between lung cancer and smoking. The other type of epidemiological study is the cohort study. In this particular case, you study a group of people, a cohort, over a long period of time to determine which factor may be associated with the appearance of a specific condition. The important point between the two, the case control and the cohort study, in the case control study, people have developed a particular condition, a cancer or whatever, heart disease. In the cohort studies, at the onset of the study, there is no indication of any problem. So essentially, in this case, you go ahead. This is what we call prospective studies. And prospective studies tend to be stronger in terms of not benefit, but in terms of how valid, in terms of validity, than the case control studies, because you don't have to worry about recall, people remembering what they ate or what they did 20 years ago. Here you go ahead. An example of cohort study is the EPIC study that concluded just recently. EPIC stands for European Prospective Investigation into Cancer Study. It involved, notice the number of people involved, over 500,000 people in 10 European countries. And what they did in this case, they looked at these people ahead and looked at their diet and see if these people had if there was a relationship between diet and cancer. And interestingly enough, in this particular case, even though a number of case control studies suggested that the eating of fruit and vegetable had a protective effect in terms of cancer, this was not confirmed by this particular cohort study, very large cohort study. And it shows that, in fact, increased intake of fruit and vegetable had a minimal effect on cancer rate, overall cancer rate. So there is some suggestion that it may benefit some cancer, but not overall. I just maybe want to mention that this is only for cancer. Still, the studies that we have with respect to heart disease suggest very strongly that the diet rich in fruits and vegetables do offer some benefits in terms of heart disease. When you come to epidemiological studies, what they can do, or what the information they give us, is relationship in terms of, or the other term, correlation. They will tell us there is an association, there is a link between this and that. It doesn't prove causation. To prove causation, you have to have stronger study, and these are the so-called interventional study. Or studies or study. An interventional study is a study where the material to be tested and the assignment of subject is controlled by the investigator. So that's much more focused, much stronger. The first interventional study goes back to the Bible. In the book of Daniel, Daniel actually brought his servants to the king and told the king, look, I'm going to feed them vegetable and I'm going to let them drink water, and let's compare their health to those of the young men that are at the royal court, and these young men who eat the royal food. And as one could expect, eating vegetable, drinking only water rather than wine appeared to be of benefit. The first interventional study. Well, let's look at an example of an interventional study. Vitamin D and calcium supplementation reduce the cancer risk, the result of a randomized trial. Notice the term randomized. And this type of study is an RCT study, a randomized clinical trial. And we're going to look at the terms that are used. Let's look at the abstract. The design of the study, it involves a large population, a 4-year population based. It is double-blind, it's randomized, and it's placebo-controlled. Now, what do we mean by all these terms? By the way, it indicates that there is a 60% reduction in cancer incidence for people that took a blend of vitamin D and calcium. So this is an interventional control study, and it's double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled. This is like the gold standard. This is the best you can get. It could be blind, it could be placebo-controlled, but here you've got the full gamut. It's double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled. So what do these different terms mean? Well, let's first look at the placebo response, what it implies. Well, essentially, as you may probably know, the placebo effect is very important. If people believe that something that they take is of benefit, they actually are going to feel better in about 30% of the case. So it's a very, very important effect, and you want to make sure when you carry your study that you take into account the placebo. And this is the reason why you have to have a blind study. You divide your group into two. One will get the substance that you want to test, like vitamin D, for instance, and the other one will take a placebo, something that will taste the same, have the same shape as the substance you want to try. So this, and the subject, the people that are in the two groups, do not know which is which, if they're taking the placebo, or if they're taking the active substance. Now, you may have noticed that in our case, in that particular case, in a particular situation, the study was double-blind. Why double-blind? This is to prevent the researcher for having an influence on the subject. Like, for instance, if I carry out a study on vitamin D and cancer, and I believe very strongly that vitamin D is of benefit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the active group. I'm going to give them the vitamin D, which would be the vitamin D. I would say, take this. Whereas to the placebo group, the people that are not taking the active substance, are taking an inert substance, I would say, take this. And the people will pick this up. They will realize that what I'm giving out. So it's really important that both the people that are under the study and the researchers or researcher carrying out the study do not know which one is which. Now, when you pick in these cases, when you pick the subject in the two groups, it has to be randomized. But you don't want to have any confounding factor. Let's say that in a particular group, you have a larger number of people that are smokers, for instance. So this will have an effect in terms of the result. So you make sure that the people in the two groups are totally picked randomly, and so that you know that there is no other confounding factor that may come into the picture. And finally, the last aspect in terms of studies is a study of studies, a meta-analysis. And essentially what it does, it looked at a number of studies, and this can be epidemiological study as well as placebo-controlled studies, and you pool them. They have to be the same. So if it's epidemiological studies, you pick a number of epidemiological studies. If it is random-based studies, placebo-controlled, you pick that type, and you pool them together to get a good result. Now, for instance, let's look in this particular case, the role of vitamin D in cancer prevention. Let's look at the abstract and let's double check what it says. In this particular case, if you start at the second line, they did a search on PubMed, and they looked at 63 observational studies involving vitamin D in relation to cancer risk. As you can see, they looked at colon cancer, they looked at breast cancer, they looked at prostate and ovarian cancer. And what they did is that they pooled these different studies, and they found that when they pooled the different studies, they found that there was a protective relationship between vitamin D status and lower risk of cancer. So the point to be made is that you can have epidemiological studies, let me go back, that you can have studies that are meta-analysis involving epidemiological studies or involving interventional studies. That can apply to both types. So let's review what we just found. So we have seen that in terms of studies, you can have observational study, also known as epidemiological studies, where you look at large group of people. And within these observational studies, you can have the case-controlled studies, when you look at people with a particular condition and compare them to people that have do not have that condition. And you can have cohort studies where you look at a number of people before any condition has developed, and you follow them for a long period of time to see under what condition a particular condition will develop. The first one tends to go back, case control study, go back and look at past studies. These are retrospective study. Cohort studies, you look ahead, these are prospective study. Then you look at the other approach, which is much stronger. These are the randomized control study, randomized control trial, RCT as they often known. And they can be double-blind, they can be blinded. Normally they are placebo-controlled. And these are the two main ones. And then you can have a study of study, and they can involve either the observational studies or the placebo-controlled randomized studies, and these are the so-called meta-analysis. So this is a full gamut of studies you may encounter in this particular course.